There is a clear connection between the way you think each day and the results you experience in your life. Many people move through their routines without noticing how their thoughts shape their actions and how those actions slowly build their future. Small decisions, repeated over time, create direction. Some lead forward, and some hold a person in the same place. This audiobook is designed to help you understand how positive thinking is not just a feeling, but a practical way of living that supports real progress. It is about how you respond to challenges, how you handle setbacks, how you build habits, and how you stay focused when things feel uncertain. You will hear simple and direct ideas that can be applied in daily life. Ideas that help you take control of your attention, improve your discipline, and build steady progress step by step. Nothing here depends on luck or sudden change. It is about actions you can start using immediately. As you listen, you will be guided through clear ways to strengthen your mindset, stay consistent, and move forward even when motivation changes. The focus is on practical thinking, daily behavior, and long-term growth that builds over time. If you have ever felt stuck, distracted, or unsure about your direction, this audiobook will help you reset your focus and return to what truly matters. The goal is simple: help you build a stronger mindset, one choice at a time, until progress becomes part of your everyday life. Chapter 1. Replace negative thoughts with hopeful daily self-talk. Every person carries a private voice inside the mind. It speaks during the quiet moments. It speaks when the day begins and when the day feels heavy. It speaks after a mistake. It speaks when success seems close and when failure seems easier to believe. That voice can become a source of strength or a source of damage. It can train the mind to stand steady, or it can weaken the heart before the battle even begins. Paused. Thinking is not pretending that life is easy. It is not denying pain. It is not acting cheerful when the truth is difficult. Real positive thinking is a discipline. It is the choice to speak to yourself with honesty and hope, even when the situation is uncertain. It is the practice of guiding the mind instead of being ruled by it. It is the refusal to let one bad moment become a bad identity. This matters because the mind listens to repetition. When a thought is repeated often enough, it begins to feel true. When a person says, "I always fail," the mind starts searching for proof. When a person says, "I can learn," the mind starts looking for a way forward. Over time, the words you use inside your own head shape the way you walk into the world. They shape your energy. They shape your choices. They shape the standards you accept for your life. Many people think success begins with talent or luck or perfect timing. Those things matter less than the daily condition of the mind. A person with a strong mind can recover from setbacks. A person with a hopeful mind can keep working after disappointment. A person with a disciplined inner voice can stay steady long enough to build something meaningful. Success is often less about one great moment and more about the ability to remain mentally useful every day. Negative self-talk can become a habit without being noticed. It often sounds normal because it is repeated so often. A person fails one test and says, "I am not smart enough." A person has one difficult conversation and says, "I ruin everything." A person sees someone else succeed and says, "I am behind and will never catch up." These thoughts may appear small, but they carry weight. They drain energy. They reduce courage. They make action feel harder than it really is. Hopeful self-talk does something different. It does not lie. It does not pretend the problem is not real. It says, "This is hard, but I can handle one step." It says, "I made a mistake and I can correct." It says, "I am not finished yet." It says, "The present moment is not the final chapter." That kind of thinking builds resilience. It helps a person remain useful under pressure. It turns attention from fear to action. The first step is to notice the inner voice without judging yourself for having one. Many people try to change their thinking by fighting themselves. That usually creates more stress. The better path is awareness. Pay attention to what you say in your own mind during ordinary moments. Notice the words that appear when plans go wrong. Notice the sentences that rise up when you feel tired. Notice the language that follows a mistake. Do not try to silence every thought at once. Just observe. The goal is to become aware of the patterns that are shaping your life. Once you notice the pattern, you can begin to challenge it. Negative thoughts often sound certain when they are actually weak. A thought like, "I can't do this," sounds final. But it is only a thought, it is not a fact. A thought like, "I am failing," sounds absolute. But it may simply mean that you are facing a hard period. A thought like, "Nothing works for me," may be a sign of exhaustion rather than truth. The mind often speaks in extremes when it feels pressure. A disciplined person learns not to obey every extreme thought. A strong daily practice is to answer negative thoughts with better ones. Not dramatic ones, not fake ones, better ones. When the mind says, "I always mess things up," answer with, "I have made mistakes, but I have also learned from them." When the mind says, "This is too much," answer with, "This is difficult, but I can handle the next step." When the mind says, "I am too late," answer with, "I can begin now and make progress from here." This is not wishful thinking. This is mental correction. It is the same kind of discipline used by an athlete who keeps training after a poor performance. The situation does not improve by self-insult. It improves by useful thought and repeated action. It helps to start the morning with a deliberate inner script. Before the phone, before the noise, before the day starts pulling at your attention, speak to yourself with purpose. Keep the words simple. Today I will stay steady. Today I will do what is in front of me. Today I will not waste time on self-attack. Today I will take one honest step after another. These statements may seem small, but they set the tone. They remind the mind who is in charge. They prepare you for the reality that the day may not be perfect and that you can still remain strong within it. The morning mind is important because it is still flexible. It has not yet been filled with other people's opinions, the rush of duties, or the fatigue of the day. That makes it the right time to choose your direction. Some people begin their day by checking messages and letting the world define how they feel. That leaves the mind open to reaction instead of intention. A better approach is to claim the first few minutes for yourself. Sit still, breathe slowly, notice your thoughts. Then replace fear with instruction. Replace confusion with purpose. The words you use should be grounded in reality. Positive self-talk is strongest when it is believable. A person who is struggling should not force themselves to say, "Everything is wonderful." That may create more distance between the mind and the truth. A more useful statement is, "This is not easy, but I can deal with it calmly." Another good statement is, "I do not need to solve everything today." Another is, "Small progress matters." When the mind hears words it can trust, it becomes more willing to follow them. One reason negative self-talk becomes powerful is that people often speak to themselves in a harsher way than they would speak to anyone else. They would never say to a friend, "You are worthless because you made a mistake." They would never tell a younger person, "You should give up because this is hard." Yet many people say those exact things to themselves. This double standard weakens the spirit. It creates shame instead of growth. A better standard is to speak inwardly with firmness and respect. You can be strict without being cruel. You can be honest without being insulting. This is the balance that builds maturity. There is a stoic strength in this. Stoicism does not mean emotionless living. It means refusing to be controlled by every passing feeling. A stoic mind asks, "What is under my control right now?" It answers, "My response, my effort, my words, my discipline." It does not waste itself on what cannot be changed in the moment. Hopeful self-talk supports that discipline. It keeps the mind focused on action instead of collapse. It says, "I cannot control everything, but I can control how I speak to myself." That is a powerful place to stand. When a difficult event happens, do not rush to define your future by it. A bad day is a bad day. It does not become a life sentence unless the mind turns it into one. A mistake is information. It is not an identity. A delay is a delay. It is not proof of failure. Many successful are simply people who learned not to give every problem the power to define them. They kept their inner language clean. They stayed in the game long enough to grow. The words you say after failure matter, especially. Failure can either teach or poison, depending on the message that follows it. If you fail and say, "I am done," then failure becomes a stop sign. If you fail and say, "I need to learn from this," then failure becomes a lesson. If you fail and say, "I knew I could not do it," then failure becomes a verdict. If you fail and say, "This attempt did not work and I will adjust," then failure becomes part of progress. The event may be the same, but the meaning is different. The meaning decides the next move. Self-talk also affects energy. A person who constantly tells themselves they are weak will feel weaker. A person who reminds themselves that effort still matters will often feel more capable. This is not magic. It is the mind and body working together. Thoughts influence posture. Thoughts influence breathing. Thoughts influence the willingness to begin. When the inner voice is heavy, the body often follows. When the inner voice is steady, the body often becomes steadier too. A practical way to improve your self-talk is to keep a short list of replacement phrases. Write them somewhere you can see them. Use simple language. "I can handle this." "This feeling will pass." "I am learning." "I do not need perfection." "I can begin again. One step is enough for now." These lines are not meant to decorate a page. They are meant to be used. Say them out loud if needed. Repeat them when the mind begins to spiral. Over time, they become easier to believe because they are paired with action. Action is the proof that hope is real. Positive thinking without action can become empty. A hopeful thought should lead to a useful step. If you tell yourself, "I can improve," then improve something small. Clean a space, answer an email, finish a task you have delayed. Read one page, make the phone call, do the workout, prepare the meal. The point is not the size of the action. The point is to teach the mind that hopeful language leads to movement. Movement creates trust. Trust creates confidence. Confidence creates more action. There will be days when the negative voice returns stronger than before. That does not mean you failed. It means you are human. The work is not to create a mind that never produces doubt. The work is to build a mind that does not surrender to doubt. Some days the battle will be loud. Some days it will be quiet. On the loud days, use simple discipline. Slow your breathing. Stand up straight. Speak one honest sentence that keeps you moving. "I am still here. I can still choose my response. I do not need to believe every thought." These words are small anchors during a storm. One of the most useful habits is to keep your attention on the present task. Negative self-talk often grows when the mind drifts too far ahead or too far back. It worries about the future or replays the past. Positive self-talk returns the mind to the current moment. Finish this one thing, read this one page, make this one call. Walk for 10 minutes, write the first line. The present moment is where effort lives. The present moment is where change begins. Many problems become smaller when they are reduced to the next useful step. Another important truth is that your environment influences your self-talk. If you spend all day in chaos, your mind will often become chaotic. If you are surrounded by voices that mock effort or celebrate laziness, your inner voice can start sounding the same. This is why it matters to protect your space. Keep your surroundings as orderly as possible. Reduce noise when you can. Spend time with people who speak with respect. Choose books and messages that strengthen rather than weaken you. A clear outer life can support a clearer inner life. Still, the strongest influence remains your own repeated attention. What you rehearse in the mind becomes familiar. What becomes familiar becomes easier to believe. If you rehearse fear, you become quick to panic. If you rehearse defeat, you become quick to quit. If you rehearse disciplined hope, you become more stable under pressure. The mind follows its training. That is why daily repetition matters. You are not just talking to yourself once. You are training yourself every day. A powerful exercise is to review the day before sleep. Ask yourself 3 simple questions. What thought weakened me today? What thought helped me today? What do I want to practice tomorrow? This kind of reflection builds awareness without drama. It helps you see patterns. It reminds you that growth is a process. it turns each day into a lesson. A person who reflects calmly becomes harder to mislead by their own moods. They begin to see thoughts as events rather than commandments. Be careful with comparison. Many people ruin their own self-talk by measuring their life against someone else's highlight reel. They look at someone else's progress and use it as evidence against themselves. That habit is unfair and destructive. The truth is that every life has hidden struggles, every success has unseen work. Comparison often feeds a voice that says you are behind. A better voice says your path has its own timing. A better voice says focus on your work. A better voice says do not trade your attention for envy. Envy weakens discipline. Clear attention strengthens it. Positive self-talk also means speaking hope into the parts of your life that feel slow. Not every result appears quickly. Not every effort gives immediate reward. When progress is slow, the mind can become impatient and harsh. That is when encouragement becomes essential. Tell yourself, slow progress is still progress. Tell yourself, consistency matters more than speed. Tell yourself, I am building something that takes time. These words protect you from quitting too early. They help you stay committed long enough for results to grow. Remember that success is not just achievement. Success is also the ability to remain steady in the face of difficulty. A person who can keep their mind clear during pressure has already won an important battle. They are less likely to make foolish choices. They are less likely to collapse under stress. They are more likely to keep learning. This inner steadiness is part of every lasting success story. It does not come by accident. It grows through practice. If your inner voice has been harsh for years, do not expect change to happen overnight. Old habits resist. That does not mean they cannot be replaced. Begin with one moment at a time. Catch one negative thought and answer it. Catch one insult and replace it. Catch one fear and restate it in a wiser form. Do this often enough and the mind will begin to shift. This is how character changes, not through dramatic speeches. Through repeated choices made in ordinary moments. There is dignity in this work. No one may see it from the outside. No applause may come. Yet it matters deeply. A person who learns how to speak kindly and truthfully to themselves becomes harder to shake. They stop living like a victim of every feeling. They begin to act like the leader of their own life. That does not make them perfect. It makes them responsible. Responsibility is the beginning of strength. When fear appears, do not treat it like a final answer. Treat it like a signal that attention is needed. Fear often grows when the mind lacks structure. Give it structure. Name the task, name the next step, name what you can control. Then act. A fearful mind calms down when it sees movement. Hopeful self-talk is not separate from action. It is what makes action possible under pressure. As the day goes on, keep returning to useful language. Use it while working. Use it while walking. Use it while waiting. Use it after mistakes. Say to yourself, stay focused. Keep your pace. Do not rush into panic. This moment is enough. Keep going. These phrases may look plain on the page, but they can be powerful in real life. They keep the mind from slipping into useless drama. They bring attention back to what matters. The goal is not to become artificially cheerful. The goal is to become mentally disciplined. Disciplined people do not waste words. They use words that serve a purpose. They speak in ways that support truth, effort, and resilience. They know that thoughts shape feelings and feelings shape actions. They know that the mind can either become a prison or a workshop. Hopeful self-talk turns the mind into a workshop. It becomes a place where problems are faced and character is built. There will be moments when the old voice returns with questions. What if this does not work? What if I am not enough? What if I fail again? Those questions can appear in any mind. The important part is what follows them. Do not chase every fearful question. Answer with calm truth. I may not know the outcome, but I can still act well. I do not need to know everything before I begin. I am enough to take the next step. This is how courage grows. Not from certainty, but from steady action in the presence of uncertainty. A life built on hopeful self-talk is not a life without hardship. It is a life with better tools. It is a life where setbacks do not become collapse. It is a life where the mind becomes a source of direction rather than damage. It is a life where daily speech supports daily effort. This is how change becomes real. This is how confidence develops. This is how a person becomes harder to break and easier to lead. Keep this truth close. You do not have to accept every thought that enters your mind. You do not have to repeat the words that weaken you. You do not have to continue speaking to yourself in the language of defeat. Each day gives another chance to choose better words. Each morning gives another chance to begin again. Each mistake gives another chance to practice wisdom. Each hard moment gives another chance to prove that you can stay steady. Speak to yourself as someone worth building. Speak to yourself as someone capable of learning. Speak to yourself as someone who can endure pressure without losing direction. Speak to yourself as someone whose life is still moving forward. Do this with honesty. Do this with discipline. Do this every day. The mind will follow what it hears most often. Make sure it hears courage more than fear. Make sure it hears truth more than insult. Make sure it hears hope more than defeat. The future is shaped in part by the language you use today. Use words that strengthen your next step. Use words that help you rise after failure. Use words that keep your hands moving and your heart steady. This is where positive thinking becomes real success. Not in empty optimism, not in denial, in honest hope, in disciplined self-talk, in the quiet refusal to destroy yourself with your own thoughts, in the daily choice to answer weakness with strength and fear with action. That choice may seem small at first. It is not small, it is the beginning of a different life. Start there. Start with the next thought. Start with the next sentence in your mind. Make it more hopeful, make it more truthful, make it more useful. Then carry that voice into the day and let your actions prove what your mind has learned. Chapter 2. Build confidence by celebrating small wins every day. One of the most powerful decisions you can make is to stop focusing on changing everything at once and start identifying the habits that are causing the biggest problems in your life. Many people feel frustrated because they try to transform their entire routine overnight. They create long lists of goals, make ambitious plans and promise themselves that tomorrow will be different. Yet after a few days, they find themselves right back where they started. The reason is simple. Lasting change does not begin with doing more. It begins with understanding what must be changed first. Take a moment and think about your daily life. Every result you experience is connected to a habit. The condition of your finances, your health, your relationships, your confidence, and your productivity are all influenced by actions you repeat consistently. Some habits move you forward. Others quietly hold you back. The challenge is that many people spend years improving minor behaviors while ignoring the few habits that create the greatest damage. The first step is honest self-observation, not judgment, not criticism. Just observation. Look at your typical day from beginning to end. Notice what you do when you wake up. Notice how you spend your free time. Pay attention to the choices you make when nobody is watching. The truth is often found in the ordinary moments that seem insignificant. Many people discover that one of their most damaging habits is procrastination. They know what needs to be done, but they continuously delay action. Important tasks are pushed into the future. Opportunities are postponed. Dreams remain ideas instead of becoming reality. Every delay may seem harmless in the moment, but over months and years, the cost becomes enormous. Success rarely belongs to the person with the best intentions. It belongs to the person who acts consistently despite discomfort. If procrastination has become part of your routine, begin by reducing the time between decision and action. When something important needs to be done, start immediately, even if you can only work on it for a few minutes. Action creates momentum. Momentum creates progress. Progress builds confidence. The sooner you begin, the easier it becomes to continue. Another habit that deserves attention is negative self-talk. Many people speak to themselves in ways they would never speak to someone they care about. They constantly focus on mistakes, weaknesses, and past failures. Over time, these thoughts become beliefs. Those beliefs influence decisions. Eventually, people begin living beneath their potential because they have convinced themselves that they are incapable of achieving more. Pay attention to the conversations happening inside your mind. Notice how often you criticize yourself unnecessarily. Replace harsh judgments with constructive thinking. Instead of saying, "I always fail," say, "I am learning how to improve." Instead of saying, "I am not good enough," say, "I can become better with practice." Small shifts in language can create significant changes in attitude. Many individuals also struggle with the habit of seeking constant distraction. Whenever discomfort appears, they immediately reach for entertainment. They scroll through social media, watch endless videos, or search for ways to avoid difficult thoughts and responsibilities. While relaxation is important, excessive distraction steals time that can never be recovered. The problem is not technology itself. The problem is allowing it to control your attention. Your attention is one of your most valuable resources. Whatever receives your attention grows stronger in your life. If distractions receive most of your focus, your goals receive less energy. Begin creating moments during the day when you are fully present with your work, your thoughts, or the people around you. Protect your attention as carefully as you would protect your money. Another crucial habit to examine is the tendency to quit too soon. Many people become excited at the beginning of a journey. They start a new project, pursue a goal, or commit to a healthier lifestyle. But when progress slows down, motivation fades, challenges appear, results take longer than expected. Instead of continuing, they abandon the process. What they fail to realize is that meaningful change often happens after a period of persistence. Growth is rarely immediate. Improvement requires repetition. The people who achieve remarkable results are not always the most talented. Often, they are simply the ones who stay committed long enough to see the benefits of their effort. Learn to become comfortable with gradual progress. Celebrate small victories. Respect the process. Every day of consistent effort strengthens your ability to continue. The goal is not perfection. The goal is persistence. There is also a habit that quietly limits countless people: avoiding responsibility. It's easy to blame circumstances, difficult people, bad luck, or past experiences. While external factors certainly influence our lives, growth begins when we focus on what we can control. Responsibility is not about assigning blame. It is about recognizing your power to respond and make different choices moving forward. When something is not working, ask yourself what you can do differently. When a mistake occurs, look for lessons instead of excuses. This mindset creates personal strength because it shifts your attention away from problems you cannot control and toward actions you can take. Many successful people share one common habit. They regularly evaluate their behavior. They do not assume they already know everything. They remain curious about their own patterns. They ask difficult questions. They identify weaknesses honestly. Then they make adjustments. This willingness to self-correct allows continuous improvement. Remember that changing a habit is not a single event. It is a process that requires patience and repetition. There will be days when progress feels slow. There will be moments when old patterns try to return. That is normal. The goal is not to avoid every setback. The goal is to keep moving forward despite setbacks. Every positive habit you build becomes easier over time. Every negative habit you weaken loses some of its influence. The small choices you make today may seem insignificant, but they are shaping your future. The person you become next year is being created by the decisions you make right now. Do not overwhelm yourself by trying to fix everything at once. Find the one habit causing the greatest damage. Focus on it. Improve it. Strengthen your discipline around it. Once progress begins, move to the next habit. This focused approach creates sustainable growth because it allows you to build momentum step by step. Your future does not depend on one perfect day. It depends on what you repeatedly choose to do. The habits you practice become the results you experience. When you identify the most crucial habits to change and commit yourself to improving them, you create a foundation for lasting success. Day by day, choice by choice, you begin building a stronger version of yourself. And that transformation starts the moment you decide that your habits will no longer control your future. Instead, your future will be shaped by the habits you choose to create. Chapter 3. Practice gratitude to notice progress and stay focused. For the next chapter, here is a fresh 1,000-word script focused on practicing gratitude to notice progress and stay focused. One of the biggest reasons people lose motivation is not because they are incapable of succeeding. It is because they stop noticing how far they have already come. Human nature often pushes us to focus on what is missing rather than what is improving. We look at the distance between where we are and where we want to be, and we become discouraged. We forget to recognize the progress that has already taken place. This is why gratitude is such a powerful practice. Gratitude changes your perspective. It helps you see growth that might otherwise go unnoticed. It reminds you that improvement is happening, even when the results are not yet dramatic. Most importantly, gratitude helps you stay focused on what is working, instead of becoming consumed by what is not. Many people believe gratitude is only about appreciating major achievements. They think they should feel grateful after reaching an important milestone, earning a promotion, buying a house, or accomplishing a lifelong goal. But gratitude becomes truly valuable when it is practiced long before those moments arrive. Success is built from small victories. A person who starts waking up 30 minutes earlier each day is making progress. Someone who chooses a healthy meal instead of an unhealthy one is making progress. A person who remains calm during a stressful situation is making progress. These moments may seem ordinary, yet they are signs that positive change is taking place. When you fail to recognize these improvements, you may convince yourself that nothing is happening. You begin to feel stuck even when you are moving forward. Eventually, discouragement takes over. Many promising journeys end because people underestimate the value of gradual advancement. Practicing gratitude helps prevent this mistake. It trains your mind to acknowledge evidence of growth. Instead of constantly asking, "Why am I not there yet?" you begin asking, "What has improved since I started?" That question creates a completely different emotional experience. Think about how often people reach goals they once desperately wanted, only to immediately focus on something else. They spend months working toward an achievement, finally reach it, and then move the finish line. Satisfaction disappears because attention shifts to the next challenge before appreciation has a chance to develop. There is nothing wrong with ambition. Wanting more from life can be healthy and productive. The problem arises when ambition eliminates appreciation. If you never acknowledge your progress, no accomplishment will ever feel sufficient. You will continue chasing future satisfaction while overlooking present growth. Gratitude creates balance. It allows you to pursue bigger goals while still appreciating where you currently stand. It reminds you that life is happening right now, not only at some future destination. Consider the person who is working hard to improve financially. They may become frustrated because they have not reached their ideal income. However, gratitude encourages them to notice that they are earning more than they did a year ago. They may have learned valuable skills, developed better habits, or reduced unnecessary spending. These improvements deserve recognition because they represent real progress. The same principle applies to personal development. Someone trying to become more confident may still experience moments of self-doubt, yet they might speak up more often than they once did. They may handle criticism better than before. They may recover from setbacks more quickly. Those changes matter because they demonstrate growth in action. Gratitude is not pretending that challenges do not exist. It is not ignoring difficulties or denying reality. Instead, it is choosing to see the complete picture. It means recognizing both the obstacles and the progress. It means understanding that improvement often occurs in small, consistent steps rather than dramatic leaps. Another important benefit of gratitude is that it helps maintain focus during difficult seasons. Every meaningful goal involves periods of uncertainty. There will be times when results appear slower than expected. There will be moments when effort feels greater than reward. During these periods, many people lose sight of why they started. Gratitude acts as an anchor. It reminds you of the opportunities you still possess. It helps you remember lessons learned, strengths developed, and experiences gained. Even when circumstances are challenging, there is usually evidence that you are stronger, wiser, or more capable than you were before. People who regularly practice gratitude often develop greater emotional resilience. They do not become immune to disappointment, but they recover from it more effectively. They understand that one setback does not erase previous progress. They recognize that temporary difficulties do not define their entire journey. A simple way to strengthen gratitude is to reflect on daily improvements. At the end of each day, ask yourself what went well. Think about one action you completed, one lesson you learned, or one decision you handled better than before. These reflections may seem small, but they gradually reshape your thinking. The mind tends to focus on problems automatically. Gratitude requires intentional attention. The more often you practice it, the easier it becomes to identify positive developments. Over time, you begin noticing opportunities where you once saw only limitations. Another valuable habit is comparing yourself to your past, rather than constantly comparing yourself to others. Comparison often creates frustration because there will always be someone who appears more successful, more experienced, or further ahead. Gratitude encourages a healthier perspective. Instead of measuring your life against another person's journey, you evaluate how much you have personally grown. This approach builds confidence because it highlights genuine improvement. You start recognizing skills you have developed, challenges you have overcome, and habits you have strengthened. Progress becomes easier to appreciate when you measure it against your own starting point. As you continue moving toward your goals, remember that every meaningful achievement is made possible by smaller successes along the way. The final result is simply the visible outcome of countless positive choices made over time. When you appreciate those choices, you strengthen your commitment to continue making them. Gratitude is more than a pleasant feeling. It is a practical tool that keeps your attention on progress. It helps you maintain motivation during slow periods. It prevents you from overlooking important victories. It allows you to enjoy the journey while continuing to pursue greater goals. The person who learns to appreciate growth develops an advantage that many people never discover. They remain encouraged when others become discouraged. They stay committed when others lose patience. They continue moving forward because they can see evidence that their efforts matter. Never underestimate the power of recognizing what is already improving in your life. Every step forward deserves acknowledgement. Every lesson learned has value. Every positive decision contributes to the person you are becoming. When gratitude becomes part of your daily thinking, you stop focusing exclusively on what remains unfinished and begin appreciating the remarkable progress that is already taking place. Chapter 4. Set clear goals and review them every morning. Here's the next chapter in a fresh, continuous format. There is a significant difference between wishing for a better future and intentionally creating one. Many people spend years hoping that their circumstances will improve, yet they never take the time to clearly define what improvement actually looks like. They have dreams, desires, and general ideas about success, but their vision remains vague. As a result, their effort becomes scattered, their focus weakens, and their progress slows. Clarity creates direction. When you know exactly what you want, your decisions become easier. You stop wasting energy on activities that do not support your purpose. You begin moving with greater confidence because you have a destination in mind. Imagine getting into a car and driving without knowing where you want to go. You may stay busy for hours, but activity alone does not guarantee progress. You could travel a great distance and still end up nowhere meaningful. The same principle applies to life. Being occupied is not the same as being productive. Many people fill their days with tasks yet remain disconnected from the outcomes they truly desire. Clear goals act as a guide. They help you determine where to invest your time, attention, and effort. They provide a standard against which you can measure your actions. Without them, it becomes easy to drift from one distraction to another, while convincing yourself that you are making progress. One of the most common mistakes people make is setting goals that are too broad. They say they want to be successful, healthier, happier, or financially secure. While these desires are understandable, they lack specificity. The mind works best when it has a clear target. The more precise your goal becomes, the easier it is to create a practical plan. Instead of saying you want to improve your health, decide exactly what that means. Perhaps you want to exercise consistently, improve your energy level, or develop better eating habits. Instead of saying you want more financial stability, identify a specific savings target or income objective. The clearer the goal, the stronger your ability to take meaningful action. Many people experience frustration because they expect goals alone to transform their lives. They write down their ambitions once and then forget about them. Days turn into weeks. Weeks turn into months. Eventually, those goals become distant thoughts buried beneath daily responsibilities. This is why reviewing your goals every morning can be so powerful. It keeps your priorities visible. It reminds you what matters before distractions begin competing for your attention. The moment you wake up, your mind is preparing for the day ahead. What you focus on during those early moments often influences your decisions for the next several hours. When you review your goals each morning, you reconnect with your purpose. You remind yourself why your effort matters. You strengthen your commitment before challenges appear. This simple habit creates consistency because it prevents your objectives from fading into the background. Think about how many demands compete for your attention every day. Messages arrive, notifications appear, responsibilities emerge unexpectedly. Other people introduce their own priorities and concerns. Without a clear sense of direction, it becomes easy to spend your entire day reacting instead of intentionally creating progress. Morning goal review helps you take control before the world begins demanding your attention. It allows you to start the day with intention rather than confusion. You become less likely to get pulled away from what truly matters because you have already reminded yourself of your destination. Another benefit of reviewing goals regularly is that it strengthens belief. Many people underestimate the importance of repetition. The thoughts you consistently expose yourself to begin shaping your mindset. When you repeatedly remind yourself of your objectives, they become more familiar and emotionally significant. Goals that remain visible stay alive in your thinking. They influence your choices throughout the day. Opportunities become easier to recognize because your mind is actively searching for them. Solutions appear more frequently because your attention remains connected to the outcomes you desire. This practice also creates accountability. When you look at your goals each morning, you naturally begin asking yourself important questions. What actions will move me closer to this objective today? What decision would support my future rather than delay it? What is the most valuable use of my time right now? These questions encourage intentional living. They shift your focus away from convenience and toward purpose. Over time, small daily choices begin producing meaningful results. Many successful individuals understand that extraordinary achievements rarely occur through occasional effort. Consistent action creates momentum. Daily attention strengthens commitment. Small improvements accumulate. The gap between where you are and where you want to be gradually becomes smaller because you continue moving forward. It is also important to understand that goals are not permanent instructions carved in stone. Life changes, circumstances evolve, new opportunities appear. Sometimes your priorities shift as you gain experience and wisdom. Reviewing your goals regularly allows you to make adjustments when necessary. This flexibility is valuable because growth often reveals new possibilities. A goal that seemed important 6 months ago may no longer align with the person you are becoming. Regular reflection helps ensure that your actions remain connected to your current vision rather than outdated assumptions. Another reason morning review is effective is that it strengthens discipline. Motivation can be unpredictable. Some days you will feel inspired. Other days you may feel tired, discouraged, or distracted. Relying solely on emotion creates inconsistency. Habits provide stability when feelings fluctuate. When reviewing your goals becomes part of your morning routine, you no longer depend on motivation to stay focused. You simply follow the process. The habit itself keeps your attention aligned with your priorities. Many people spend years searching for complicated strategies while overlooking simple practices that can transform their lives. Reading your goals each morning may seem insignificant, but small actions repeated consistently often produce remarkable outcomes. The power is not found in one morning. The power is found in hundreds of mornings accumulated over time. Each day presents an opportunity to move closer to the future you desire. Every decision either supports your objectives or pulls you further away from them. The more clearly you understand what you are working toward, the easier it becomes to make choices that serve your long-term vision. Remember that goals are not merely wishes. They are commitments. They represent a decision to move intentionally in a specific direction. When those commitments remain visible, they influence behavior. When behavior changes, results begin to change as well. Your future is shaped by what receives your attention. If your goals are forgotten, they lose their ability to guide you. If they remain present in your daily thinking, they become powerful tools for growth. Reviewing them every morning creates a constant reminder that your life is moving somewhere meaningful. The person who begins each day with clarity possesses a tremendous advantage. While others allow circumstances to dictate their actions, that person operates with purpose. While others become distracted by temporary concerns, that person remains connected to a larger vision. Day after day, choice after choice, they continue building the future they have intentionally decided to create. Success rarely happens by accident. It grows from clear direction, consistent focus, and deliberate action. When you set meaningful goals and review them every morning, you create a daily system that keeps you moving toward the life you truly want. That simple habit can become one of the most valuable investments you ever make in yourself. Chapter 5. Act on solutions instead of dwelling on problems. There is a point in every person's life where awareness becomes a turning point. You begin to see that problems are not the real obstacle. The real obstacle is what you do after you notice them. Some people stop at the problem itself. They analyze it repeatedly, describe it in detail, and revisit it in their thoughts throughout the day. Others move differently. They acknowledge the situation, then immediately shift their attention toward what can be done next. The difference between these two approaches shapes the entire direction of a life. Dwelling on problems creates a cycle that feels active but produces no progress. The mind keeps returning to the same concern, often adding new layers of frustration each time. It feels like thinking, but it is actually repetition without resolution. The situation remains unchanged, while emotional tension increases. Over time, this pattern drains energy that could have been used for improvement. Action, on the other hand, interrupts that cycle. It redirects attention from analysis to movement. Even a small step breaks the mental loop. It replaces uncertainty with direction. Instead of asking why something is wrong over and over again, the focus shifts toward what can be adjusted, improved, or attempted. Many people underestimate how powerful even a minor action can be. They believe solutions must be large or perfect before they are meaningful. As a result, they delay. They wait for ideal conditions. They wait for complete clarity. But real progress rarely begins under perfect conditions. It begins in moments of uncertainty, when a decision is made to move anyway. When a problem appears, the natural reaction is often emotional. There may be frustration, disappointment, or confusion. These reactions are normal, but they do not need to control your next step. What matters most is what happens after the initial response. You can remain stuck in the emotional weight of the situation, or you can transition into problem-solving mode. Problem-solving requires a shift in focus. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" the question becomes, "What can I do right now that moves me forward?" That shift alone changes everything. It places responsibility back in your hands. It transforms uncertainty into direction. There is a quiet strength in people who focus on solutions. They do not ignore difficulties. They simply refuse to stay trapped inside them. When something goes wrong, they do not spend excessive time explaining the problem. They spend their energy identifying the next useful step. That mindset creates momentum, even in difficult situations. Momentum is important because it changes perception. When you take action, even a small one, your mind receives feedback. It sees evidence that movement is possible. That evidence reduces hesitation. It builds confidence. Each step forward makes the next step easier to take. Over time, progress becomes a habit rather than a struggle. One of the most common barriers to action is overthinking. The mind tries to anticipate every possible outcome before any decision is made. It searches for guarantees. It tries to eliminate risk completely. But life does not offer certainty in advance. Waiting for perfect assurance often leads to inaction. A more effective approach is to work with available information instead of waiting for complete answers. You make the best decision you can with what you know right now. If adjustments are needed later, you make them then. This flexible approach allows progress even in uncertain conditions. Another challenge is emotional attachment to problems. Sometimes, people become so familiar with their difficulties that those difficulties start to feel like fixed parts of their identity. They talk about them frequently. They think about them repeatedly. Over time, the problem feels larger than the possibility of change. But identity should not be built around struggle. It should be built around response. Your power is not defined by what happens to you. It is defined by how you respond to what happens. Two people can face the same situation and experience completely different outcomes based on their reactions. One may remain focused on limitation, while the other begins searching for options. The situation is the same, but the direction is completely different. Acting on solutions requires discipline. It means choosing response over reaction. It means training your mind to move toward constructive thinking, especially when discomfort appears. This does not happen automatically. It develops through repetition and awareness. One practical way to strengthen this mindset is to pause briefly whenever a problem appears and ask a simple question. What is one thing I can do right now that improves this situation, even slightly? The answer does not need to be impressive. It only needs to be useful. Sending a message, gathering information, making a plan, or taking a small step can be enough to shift direction. Another important realization is that not every problem requires immediate resolution. Some situations improve with time, clarity, or external factors. However, even in those cases, action still matters. You can prepare, you can organize your thoughts, you can position yourself to respond effectively when conditions change. Doing nothing rarely helps anything improve. People who consistently act on solutions tend to develop a different relationship with challenges. Instead of fearing problems, they see them as situations that require navigation. This perspective reduces emotional pressure. It creates a sense of capability rather than helplessness. Over time, confidence grows not because life becomes easier, but because response becomes more effective. It is also important to recognize that small actions, often create unexpected progress. A simple step can reveal information that was not visible before. It can open a conversation, create an opportunity, or clarify confusion. Action produces feedback, and feedback leads to better decisions. Without action, there is no feedback, only speculation. Dwelling keeps attention fixed on what is wrong. Action shifts attention toward what is possible. That shift is the foundation of growth. It allows movement even when clarity is limited. It's uncertainty into exploration rather than stagnation. As this pattern becomes consistent, something important changes internally. You begin to trust yourself more. Not because problems disappear, but because you learn that you are capable of responding to them. That trust becomes a stabilizing force in your life. It reduces fear. It increases resilience. It supports long-term progress. In the end, life will always present challenges. That will not change. What can change is your approach. You can spend time analyzing difficulties without direction, or you can use those moments as signals to act. One approach leads to repetition of the same situation. The other leads to movement and development. Every problem carries within it the possibility of response. When you train yourself to look for that response first, you begin to shift your entire experience of life. You move from mental stagnation into practical progress. You stop circling the issue and start engaging with it. The difference may seem small at first, but over time it becomes significant. A life shaped by action is a life shaped by progress, and progress begins the moment you decide that problems are not places to stay, but signals that point toward what to do next. Chapter 6. Surround yourself with people who encourage positive growth. The environment you spend time in has a quiet but constant influence on your thinking, your choices, and the direction of your life. It does not always announce itself. It does not always feel obvious in the moment. Yet over time, the people around you begin to shape what you believe is normal, what you expect from yourself, and how far you are willing to go. Many people focus only on personal effort when they think about growth. They assume that success depends entirely on discipline, motivation, and willpower. While those qualities matter, they are not the whole picture. Human behavior is deeply influenced by social surroundings. The conversations you engage in, the attitudes you hear regularly, and the expectations of those closest to you all leave an imprint on your mindset. When you are surrounded by people who consistently complain, doubt possibilities, or avoid responsibility, it becomes easier to adopt those patterns without realizing it. You may start to think more cautiously, act more hesitantly, and question your own potential more frequently. Not because you consciously chose to, but because repetition shapes perception. On the other hand, when you are in the presence of individuals who focus on improvement, who take responsibility for their actions, and who actively pursue better outcomes, your thinking begins to shift in a different direction. You start to observe how they approach challenges. You notice how they respond to setbacks. You begin to understand that effort and progress are normal parts of life rather than rare exceptions. Encouragement is not just about praise, it is about influence. A person who encourages positive growth does more than offer supportive words. They challenge you to think differently. They remind you of your capabilities when you forget them. They do not allow excuses to become permanent beliefs. Their presence pushes you to rise slightly higher than you might on your own. This does not mean you need a large circle of people to grow. In fact, a small group of the right individuals can have a greater impact than a large group that does not support your direction. Quality matters more than quantity. A few consistent voices that reinforce growth-oriented thinking can gradually reshape your internal dialogue. It is important to recognize that not every relationship in your life will naturally support your development. Some connections are built on shared habits that may no longer align with who you are trying to become. This realization is not about blame. It is about awareness. People are often acting from their own level of understanding and experience. However, Your responsibility is to be mindful of what influence you allow to remain close. Choosing your environment is not an act of rejection. It is an act of direction. It is deciding that your future deserves attention and that your daily influences should reflect the kind of person you want to become. When you begin to prioritize growth-oriented connections, your standards naturally begin to change. Conversations become more meaningful, time becomes more valuable, energy is spent more intentionally. Being around supportive individuals also changes how you respond to difficulty. Instead of feeling isolated during challenges, you begin to see that struggle is a shared experience. Others have faced obstacles and continued forward. Their examples remind you that setbacks are not final outcomes but temporary stages in a longer process. There is also a subtle but powerful effect that happens through observation. When you see others taking consistent action toward their goals, it becomes easier to believe that you can do the same. Their habits begin to influence your expectations. What once felt difficult starts to feel more achievable because you are witnessing it being done regularly by people close to you. Encouraging environments do not eliminate challenges, but they change how those challenges are interpreted. A setback becomes something to learn from rather than something to avoid. A mistake becomes part of progress instead of proof of failure. Over time, this shift in interpretation builds emotional strength and stability. It is also important to understand that encouragement is not always comfortable. The people who support your growth may also challenge your thinking. They may point out inconsistencies in your actions or question decisions that do not align with your goals. This type of feedback can feel uncomfortable, but it is often valuable. It prevents stagnation and keeps you aware of your direction. At the same time, you also influence the people around you. The energy you bring into conversations, the mindset you express, and the habits you demonstrate contribute to the environment you are part of. Growth-oriented communities are not created by one person alone. They are built through mutual reinforcement, where each individual contributes to the development of others. When you actively seek out people who encourage positive growth, you begin to notice changes within yourself. Your goals feel more realistic. Your actions become more intentional. Your mindset shifts from hesitation to engagement. You begin to expect progress instead of uncertainty. This process does not happen instantly. It develops gradually through repeated exposure and interaction. Small conversations, shared experiences, and consistent examples of effort slowly reshape your thinking. Over time, what once felt unfamiliar becomes natural. It is also important to reflect on the energy exchange within your relationships. After spending time with certain individuals, notice how you feel. Do you feel motivated, focused, and clearer about your direction? Or do you feel drained, uncertain, and distracted? These emotional signals often reveal whether a connection is supporting your growth or limiting it. Choosing supportive environments may require change. It may involve spending less time with certain influences and more time seeking out those who align with your direction. This can feel uncomfortable at first, especially when long-standing relationships are involved. However, growth often requires making decisions based on where you want to go, not just where you have been. As you move forward, you may also discover that becoming a source of encouragement for others reinforces your own development. When you support positive growth in others, you strengthen those same patterns within yourself. You become more aware of your own mindset, more intentional in your actions, and more consistent in your habits. Surrounding yourself with the right people does not guarantee success, but it significantly increases the likelihood of sustained progress. It creates an environment where growth is normal, effort is expected, and improvement is continuously reinforced. In the long run, your environment becomes one of the strongest influences on your identity. The people you spend time with shape the standards you accept, the beliefs you hold, and the direction you take. When that environment encourages positive growth, it becomes easier to stay focused, stay committed, and continue moving forward even when challenges appear. The decision to be mindful of your surroundings is ultimately a decision to take responsibility for your future. It is recognizing that progress is not only an individual effort, but also a reflection of the influences you allow into your life. When you choose those influences wisely, you create conditions where growth is not only possible but consistently supported. Chapter 7. Learn from setbacks and keep moving forward calmly. Setbacks are a natural part of any meaningful effort. They appear in different forms, sometimes as mistakes, sometimes as delays, sometimes as outcomes that do not match expectations. No matter how carefully someone plans, there will always be moments when things do not unfold as intended. The difference between continued growth and repeated frustration is not the absence of setbacks, but the way those moments are understood and handled. Many people interpret setbacks as signals to stop. A single failure can feel like confirmation that progress is not possible. This reaction is often emotional and immediate. It creates discouragement and leads to withdrawal from the very actions that could eventually produce success. When this pattern continues, a person begins to associate effort with disappointment, which weakens motivation over time. A more constructive approach is to treat setbacks as information rather than final judgments. Every unexpected result contains details about what did not work, what needs adjustment, or what was missing in the process. When viewed from this perspective, a setback becomes part of learning rather than a barrier to progress. It becomes a moment of correction rather than a point of conclusion. Learning from setbacks requires a shift in attention. Instead of focusing on the discomfort of the outcome, the focus moves toward understanding the sequence of actions that led there. This is not about self-criticism. It is about clarity. What was attempted? What assumptions were made? What factors were overlooked? These questions help extract value from the experience without turning it into emotional weight. Many individuals struggle because they expect progress to be linear. They imagine improvement as a straight path upward, where each step leads smoothly to the next. In reality, progress often includes pauses, adjustments, and unexpected turns. When expectations are too rigid, normal fluctuations in results can feel like failure rather than part of the process. Remaining calm during setbacks is essential because emotional reactions often distort perception. When frustration increases, thinking becomes less clear. Decisions may be made quickly in response to discomfort rather than based on thoughtful evaluation. Calmness creates space between the situation and the response, allowing more effective decisions to be made. Calm thinking does not mean ignoring the setback or pretending it does not matter. It means acknowledging what happened without allowing it to control the next action. It is the ability to observe the situation clearly, understand its impact, and still choose a constructive response. This balance prevents small difficulties from turning into long-term disruptions. One of the most important skills in handling setbacks is maintaining continuity. Many people stop entirely when something goes wrong. They pause their efforts, lose momentum, and then struggle to restart later. However, keeping even a minimal level of progress going can make a significant difference. Continuing in a reduced or adjusted form helps preserve forward movement while allowing time for correction. Setbacks also reveal gaps in preparation. Sometimes the issue is not effort but strategy. Something may have been missing in the approach, timing, or execution. Instead of interpreting this as failure, it can be understood as refinement. Each adjustment brings the process closer to effectiveness. Improvement is often the result of repeated refinement rather than one perfect attempt. Another important aspect is separating identity from outcome. A setback is an event, not a definition of who you are. When people connect results too closely with personal value, every difficulty feels more intense than it needs to be. By recognizing that outcomes are temporary and changeable, emotional pressure is reduced. This creates room for clearer thinking and better decisions. Experience shows that many successful paths include repeated setbacks. What distinguishes long-term progress is not avoiding difficulty but continuing despite it. Each challenge faced and processed adds depth to understanding. Over time, this builds resilience, which is not a lack of struggle, but the ability to remain steady within it. There is also value in reviewing how expectations influence reactions. Sometimes setbacks feel heavier because the expected outcome was too fixed or too immediate. Adjusting expectations does not lower ambition. It aligns understanding with reality. This alignment makes it easier to stay steady when results take time to develop. After a setback, one of the most effective actions is to return to simple steps. Complexity often increases pressure, while simplicity restores clarity. Identifying one or two small actions that can be taken immediately helps rebuild momentum. These actions do not need to solve everything at once. Their purpose is to re-establish movement and restore focus. Another key idea is that setbacks often contain hidden progress. Even when the outcome is not successful, there may be improvements in skill, awareness, or understanding that were not present before. Recognizing these elements helps prevent discouragement and reinforces the idea that effort is still producing value, even when results are not yet visible. It is also helpful to understand that emotional recovery takes time. After an unexpected result, the mind may need a brief period to adjust. During this time, forcing immediate clarity or decision-making can be counterproductive. Allowing space for reflection helps restore balance, making it easier to identify practical next steps. Moving forward calmly is not about ignoring ambition or reducing effort. It is about maintaining stability while continuing the journey. Calm movement allows consistency, and consistency creates progress over time. When actions are driven by clarity instead of emotional reaction, decisions become more reliable and sustainable. People who develop this approach begin to experience setbacks differently. Instead of viewing them as interruptions, they see them as part of the structure of progress. This shift reduces fear of failure and increases willingness to take action. When failure is no longer seen as final, experimentation becomes easier and learning becomes faster. Over time, this mindset builds a deeper sense of confidence. Not confidence based on perfect results, but confidence based on the ability to respond effectively when things do not go as planned. This type of confidence is stable because it is grounded in experience rather than assumption. Every setback carries a choice within it. One path leads to stopping, withdrawing, and repeating the same cycle later. The other path leads to reflection, adjustment, and continued movement. The difference between these paths is not determined by the setback itself, but by the response that follows. When setbacks are approached with calm awareness and a willingness to learn, they lose their power to stop progress. Instead, they become part of the ongoing process of improvement. Each one contributes something valuable, even if that value is not immediately visible. The ability to learn from difficulties and continue forward without losing stability is one of the most important skills in long-term development. It allows growth to continue even under imperfect conditions. It ensures that progress is not dependent on ideal circumstances, but on consistent response. In the end, setbacks are not separate from success. They are part of the path that leads to it. The key is not avoiding them, but learning how to move through them with clarity, patience, and calm persistence. When that approach becomes consistent, progress continues regardless of temporary disruption, and forward movement becomes a natural part of how life is handled. Chapter 8. Strengthen habits that support discipline and steady improvement. Discipline is not built in a single moment of motivation. It develops quietly through repeated actions that become part of how you live each day. Many people think discipline is something you either have or do not have, but that is not accurate. Discipline is shaped through habits, and habits are shaped through repetition. What you consistently do becomes easier over time, not because the task changes, but because your response to it becomes automatic. The foundation of steady improvement is not intensity, it is consistency. Intense effort may create short bursts of progress, but without structure, it often fades quickly. Consistency, even at a moderate level, creates a reliable path forward. It allows growth to accumulate in a stable way, without requiring constant emotional energy. One of the first steps in strengthening discipline is reducing reliance on mood. Many people allow their daily actions to depend on how they feel in the moment. If energy is high, they act. If energy is low, they delay. This creates an unpredictable pattern where progress appears and disappears. A disciplined approach replaces this unpredictability with structure. Actions are performed because they are part of a system, not because they feel convenient at a specific time. Habits that support discipline are often simple in nature. They are not dramatic or complicated. They involve small decisions, repeated consistently. Waking up at a set time, completing important tasks before distractions, maintaining focus for specific periods, and following through on commitments are examples of behaviors that build stability over time. Each of these actions may seem minor on its own, but together they form the foundation of long-term improvement. The strength of a habit is not measured by how impressive it appears, but by how consistently it is maintained. A simple action repeated daily has more impact than an ambitious action performed occasionally. This is because repetition builds identity. Over time, you begin to see yourself as someone who follows through, not someone who only starts and stops. Discipline also grows through structure. When your day has clear patterns, decisions become easier. Instead of constantly deciding what to do next, your routine provides direction. This reduces mental fatigue and increases focus. Structure removes unnecessary decision-making and allows energy to be directed toward meaningful work. Another important aspect of strengthening discipline is creating clear boundaries. Without boundaries, distractions gradually take over available time. Small interruptions accumulate until they begin to dominate the day. Setting limits on when and how certain activities are done helps protect focus. This could include designated periods for work, rest, reflection, and learning. Boundaries ensure that important actions are not constantly pushed aside. Steady improvement also depends on repetition, without expectation of immediate reward. Many people struggle to maintain discipline because they expect quick results. When results take longer than expected, motivation decreases. However, habits are not designed for immediate reward. They are designed for gradual transformation. The benefit becomes visible over time, not instantly. A disciplined mindset accepts that progress may feel slow in the beginning. What matters is not speed, but direction. Every repeated action strengthens a pattern. Every completed task reinforces reliability. Over time, these patterns accumulate into noticeable change. What once required effort becomes natural. Another key factor in building discipline is awareness of internal resistance. There will always be moments when avoidance feels easier than action. This resistance is normal, but it does not need to be followed. Recognizing it without acting on it immediately creates space for choice. Instead of reacting automatically, you begin to respond intentionally. Small commitments are powerful tools for building discipline. When a task feels overwhelming, breaking it into smaller steps makes it easier to begin. Starting is often the most difficult part. Once action begins, continuation becomes more manageable. Each small completion builds momentum, and momentum reduces resistance. Habits that support discipline also require consistency in environment. The surroundings you operate in influence your behavior more than you may realize. A disorganized environment can make focus more difficult, while a structured environment supports clarity. Adjusting your surroundings to match your intentions helps reinforce disciplined behavior without relying solely on willpower. It is also important to understand that discipline is not about rigidity. It is about reliability. A disciplined person is not someone who never adjusts, but someone who consistently returns to their commitments. Flexibility exists, but it does not replace direction. Adjustments may be made, but the overall structure remains intact. Over time, disciplined habits create a sense of stability. You begin to trust your own actions because they become predictable in a positive way. This trust reduces internal conflict. You no longer debate whether to follow through on important tasks. You simply proceed because it has become part of your identity. Another important element is reflection. Periodically reviewing your habits helps ensure they still align with your goals. Some habits may need refinement, others may need strengthening. Reflection allows continuous adjustment without losing consistency. It ensures that discipline remains connected to purpose, rather than becoming mechanical repetition. Steady improvement comes from accumulation. Each day may not show dramatic change, but each day contributes to the overall direction. Like small layers building over time, progress becomes visible only after consistency has been maintained for long enough. This requires patience and trust in the process. Discipline also influences how you handle distractions. Instead of reacting to every interruption, you begin to prioritize what deserves attention. This does not mean eliminating all distractions completely, but it does mean reducing their influence. Over time, focus becomes easier to maintain because attention is no longer constantly divided. Another important realization is that discipline strengthens itself. The more consistently you follow your habits, the easier it becomes to continue. Each successful action reinforces the next one. This creates a cycle where effort gradually decreases while consistency increases. Even when progress feels slow, disciplined habits continue to produce results beneath the surface. Skills develop, understanding deepens, and capacity increases gradually. These improvements may not always be immediately visible, but they accumulate steadily. Ultimately, strengthening habits that support discipline is about building reliability within yourself. It is about creating a system where actions are guided by intention rather than impulse. It is about choosing consistency over randomness and direction over distraction. When discipline becomes part of daily life, improvement no longer depends on temporary motivation. It becomes a natural outcome of how you live. Each day reinforces the next, and progress becomes a continuous process rather than a series of isolated efforts. Over time, this steady approach shapes not only what you do, but who you become. Chapter 9. Choose optimism during challenges and protect your peace. Challenges are unavoidable in any meaningful path. They appear in different forms, sometimes slowly building over time, and sometimes arriving without warning. What determines their impact is not only the situation itself, but the way it is interpreted internally. The same event can create confusion in one person and clarity in another. Depending on the mindset applied to it, optimism during difficult moments is not about ignoring reality or pretending that problems do not exist. It is about choosing how to interpret what is happening and deciding where to place attention next. There is always more than one way to view a situation. One perspective leads to pressure and limitation, while another opens the possibility of response and progress. When challenges arise, the mind often moves quickly toward worst-case thinking. It begins to predict negative outcomes, revisit past failures, and amplify uncertainty. This reaction can feel automatic, but it is not fixed. It can be observed and redirected. The ability to notice this pattern is the first step in changing it. Choosing optimism begins with interruption. Instead of allowing immediate assumptions to grow unchecked, there is a moment of pause where thought can be redirected. In that space, a different question can be asked. Instead of focusing on what is going wrong, attention shifts toward what can still be done. That shift changes the direction of thinking from limitation to possibility. Optimism does not require certainty that everything will turn out perfectly. It requires willingness to remain open to solutions that are not yet visible. Many situations that initially appear restrictive later reveal options that were not obvious at the beginning. When the mind stays open, it becomes more capable of recognizing those options as they emerge. During challenges, attention becomes especially important. What you repeatedly focus on begins to shape your emotional state. If attention remains fixed on obstacles, stress increases and thinking narrows. If attention is directed toward constructive steps, even small ones, emotional stability improves and decision-making becomes clearer. Where attention goes, internal experience follows. Protecting peace during difficult periods is essential because clarity depends on stability. When internal tension rises too high, perception becomes distorted. Small problems can appear larger than they are, and simple solutions can seem more complicated than necessary. Maintaining a sense of calm allows situations to be seen more accurately. Peace is not something that depends entirely on external conditions. It is influenced by internal choices, how you interpret events, how long you dwell on them, and how quickly you shift toward response, all affect your level of stability. While external circumstances may not always be controllable, internal response remains within reach. One way to protect peace is by limiting unnecessary mental repetition. When a challenge is constantly replayed in the mind without producing new insight, it adds emotional weight without creating progress. Breaking this cycle requires conscious redirection. Attention is moved from repeated concern toward practical consideration of next steps. Another important factor is emotional distance from immediate reactions. The first response to difficulty is often intense, but it does not need to define the entire experience. Allowing emotions to settle before making decisions helps prevent impulsive actions that may not align with long-term intentions. Calm observation creates space for better judgment. Optimism also involves recognizing what remains functional even during difficult times. When something goes wrong, it is easy to focus entirely on what has been disrupted. However, there are usually other areas that remain stable or unaffected. Identifying these areas helps restore balance and prevents the situation from feeling overwhelming. People who consistently maintain a constructive mindset during challenges tend to develop stronger resilience over time. This does not mean they avoid difficulty, but that they recover more effectively from it. Their focus shifts from emotional reaction to practical adjustment more quickly, which allows them to continue moving forward without prolonged disruption. Protecting peace also involves setting boundaries around external influences. Not every conversation, environment, or source of information contributes positively during sensitive moments. Being selective about what you engage with helps preserve mental clarity. This is not about avoidance, but about maintaining a stable internal state while navigating external demands. There is also value in simplifying thinking during challenges. Complex interpretations often increase stress and reduce clarity. Returning to simple, direct observations helps reduce mental noise. What is happening right now? What can be influenced at this moment? What is the next reasonable step? These types of questions bring focus back to immediate reality. Optimism grows stronger when it is practiced consistently, not only during easy periods, but especially during difficult ones. It becomes a trained response rather than a forced effort. Over time, the mind becomes more accustomed to looking for possibilities instead of becoming fixed on problems. It is important to understand that optimism does not eliminate challenges. It changes how they are experienced and handled. A challenge approached with constructive thinking often becomes more manageable because attention is directed toward response rather than resistance. This does not reduce seriousness, but it improves effectiveness. Protecting peace also means recognizing when to step back mentally. Continuous engagement with a difficult situation without rest can reduce clarity. Allowing brief pauses helps restore perspective. These pauses are not avoidance. They are recovery periods that support better thinking. Another key element is self-talk. The way you speak internally during challenges influences emotional stability. Harsh or absolute thinking tends to increase pressure, while balanced thinking creates space for adjustment. Replacing extreme interpretations with more measured understanding helps maintain calm. Over time, choosing optimism during challenges builds a deeper sense of trust in your ability to handle situations. This trust is not based on expecting everything to go smoothly, but on knowing that you can respond effectively even when it does not. That awareness reduces fear and increases steadiness. Peace is strengthened when focus remains on what is controllable. Many aspects of difficult situations lie outside direct influence. Constantly focusing on those areas leads to frustration. Redirecting attention toward actions that can be taken restores a sense of direction and reduces emotional strain. Every challenge carries within it an opportunity to strengthen mindset. Not because difficulties are desirable, but because response to them develops inner stability. Each situation becomes a chance to practice calm thinking, constructive focus, and intentional action. Choosing optimism is ultimately a decision about where to place mental energy. It is choosing to invest attention in possibilities rather than limitations, in solutions rather than repetition, and in forward movement rather than emotional stagnation. This choice does not remove difficulty, but it changes the experience of it. Protecting peace is a continuous process rather than a single action. It involves repeated awareness, consistent redirection of thought, and deliberate focus on what supports stability. When practiced regularly, it becomes a natural way of responding to life's uncertainties. In the long run, this approach allows challenges to exist without dominating internal experience. It creates space for clarity even in uncertain moments and supports steady progress despite external fluctuations. Optimism and peace together form a foundation that keeps movement forward possible, regardless of circumstance. Chapter 10. Persist with positive actions until success becomes natural. Success is rarely the result of a single breakthrough moment. It is the outcome of repeated actions performed consistently over time, often long before visible results appear. Many people start with enthusiasm, but only a few continue when the excitement fades. The difference between those who reach lasting success and those who stop early is persistence with positive action, even when progress feels slow or unclear. At the beginning of any meaningful effort, results are usually minimal. Effort feels greater than reward. Progress is not yet visible in a satisfying way. This stage is where most people become uncertain and begin to question whether their actions are working. However, this early phase is not a sign of failure. It is the foundation phase, where patterns are being formed beneath the surface. Persisting during this stage requires trust in the process, rather than reliance on immediate feedback. Not every action produces instant results, but every consistent action contributes to a cumulative effect. Over time, these contributions build into noticeable change. What feels small in the moment becomes significant when repeated enough times. Positive actions are most effective when they are maintained without interruption. Interruption breaks momentum, and rebuilding momentum requires additional effort. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. Intense effort can create short bursts of progress, but sustained effort creates structure. Structure leads to stability, and stability supports long-term success. One of the main reasons people stop early is because they underestimate the time required for meaningful change. They expect visible results too quickly and interpret delay as a lack of progress. In reality, many important developments happen gradually and are not immediately obvious. Skills strengthen quietly. Understanding deepens through repetition. Confidence builds through experience, not expectation. Persistence is not about forcing action through exhaustion. It is about maintaining steady engagement, even when motivation fluctuates. Motivation naturally rises and falls, but habits provide continuity. When positive actions become habitual, they no longer depend on emotional readiness. They become part of routine behavior. Another important aspect of persistence is accepting that improvement is not always linear. There will be periods of visible progress, followed by periods of slower development. These variations are normal and do not indicate failure. They are part of the natural rhythm of growth. Recognizing this prevents unnecessary discouragement during slower phases. Many people stop because they misinterpret difficulty as a sign to change direction completely. While adjustment may sometimes be necessary, stopping entirely is often a reaction rather than a strategy. A more effective response is to evaluate what can be refined while continuing forward. Small adjustments maintain momentum while improving effectiveness. Positive actions also gain strength through repetition. The more consistently they are performed, the easier they become. What once required conscious effort gradually becomes automatic. This shift is important because it reduces internal resistance. Actions that are repeated often enough begin to feel natural rather than forced. As positive behaviors become more familiar, identity begins to shift. Instead of seeing yourself as someone trying to change, you begin to see yourself as someone who already operates in a certain way. This change in self-perception reinforces continued action. Behavior and identity begin to support each other, creating a stable cycle of growth. Spence also builds resilience. When challenges appear, individuals who have developed consistent positive habits are less likely to abandon their direction. They are accustomed to continuing despite difficulty. This experience of continuing builds confidence in their ability to handle future challenges. There is also value in focusing on process rather than outcome. Outcomes are influenced by many factors, some of which are not immediately visible or controllable. Process, however, is within direct influence. When attention remains on daily actions, progress becomes more stable and less dependent on external variability. Another important realization is that success often feels gradual from the inside, but appears sudden from the outside. People observing the results may see a moment of achievement, but that moment is usually the result of long-term persistence. This difference between internal experience and external perception can lead to misunderstanding if not recognized. Continuing positive actions also requires patience with oneself. There will be moments when consistency is not perfect. Temporary lapses do not erase progress. What matters is the overall direction. Returning to positive action after interruption is part of the process, not a failure within it. Over time, persistence creates familiarity. Tasks that once felt difficult begin to feel manageable. Uncertainty decreases because experience has replaced guesswork. The process becomes clearer through repetition, and confidence grows through repeated exposure. Another important element is reducing reliance on immediate validation. Constant need for instant results can interrupt long-term effort. When focus shifts from immediate reward to long-term development, persistence becomes easier to maintain. The value of action is measured by direction, not instant feedback. Positive actions also reinforce each other. One productive habit often supports another. For example, consistent effort in one area can improve focus in another. Over time, these interconnected behaviors create a stronger overall system of productivity and stability. It is also important to recognize that persistence is not rigid repetition of the same approach, regardless of results. It involves ongoing learning and refinement. The core direction remains consistent, but methods may evolve as understanding improves. This balance between consistency and adaptability strengthens long-term effectiveness. As persistence continues, success begins to feel less like a distant goal and more like a natural outcome of behavior. Actions that once required effort become automatic. Choices align more naturally with desired outcomes. The gap between intention and behavior gradually narrows. Eventually, what once required conscious discipline becomes part of everyday functioning. Positive actions are no longer separate from identity, but integrated into it. At this stage, success is not something that is constantly pursued with effort. It becomes something that emerges naturally from established patterns. This transformation does not happen suddenly. It is the result of accumulated repetition over time. Each consistent action contributes to shaping behavior, mindset, and capability. The process is gradual, but it is reliable when maintained. The key to reaching this stage is continuation without unnecessary interruption. Even when progress feels slow, continued action ensures that momentum is preserved. Even when uncertainty appears, consistent behavior maintains direction. Over time, this steadiness produces visible results that reflect the effort invested. In the end, persistence with positive actions is what allows transformation to become stable rather than temporary. It turns effort into habit, habit into identity, and identity into consistent outcomes. Success stops being a distant event and becomes a natural extension of how life is lived each day.